to share their experience of the municipalities that have gone through the Euro integration process. And this is something that Kelmend Zajazi will share with us, the Executive Director of the Networks of the Associations of Local Authorities of Southeastern Europe. Kelmend, it's all yours now.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I mean, by inviting Nalas here, you recognize the relevance of the experience of local governments in Southeast Europe, sharing a very similar contextual background. So in the last decade or two, the local governments have gone through a reconciliation process after Balkan armed conflicts, but also in the same time going through the EU integration process and decentralization. Just for your information, all of Balkan peace agreements that ended the wars in the Balkans, they have decentralization embedded as a part of the peace agreements. So the experience is particularly relevant. And I would like to highlight a couple of messages which show how the process of EU integration and all these overlapping processes can also have a risk of putting out the relevance of local governments in the processes. First, in the EU accession process, the approach of the Commission is fundamentals first, which is the right approach. It gives emphasis to rule of law, to building democratic institutions. But in the other hand, sometimes it's forgotten that these democratic institutions means also local government. Public administration reform, for instance, in the Balkans now, it is focused on central government public administration reform, and gradually, in the years that have passed in our EU integration path in the Balkans, the role of local governments and their associations have been on standby almost, and so our appeal is. Let's take the fundamentals, the human rights, rule of law, and democratic institutions. Let's not forget the importance of local governments in all these, because all these European values and European way of life and the European the commitment to European way of building institutional of state building is related to the principles of subsidiarity, of multi-level governance, and so on. But this can only happen if the role of local government associations is provided from the outset a strong role in the process. It should not be expected that the central government will provide this role to civil society and to local governments on its own, but this needs to be designed in the development process. We know that 70% of acquis communautaire needs to be implemented by local governments, and therefore they need to understand what are the European policies and how these translate into their role in society. In delivering public services. The pre-accession support is organized through the national IPA coordinator, which is usually a minister of EU integration. And here it is expected that the NIPAC will involve local governments, but these most often it doesn't really happen. So our appeal is that in designing the pre-accession support, in supporting the reconstruction resources in Ukraine, the local government associations should have the national local government association, and in this case, Association of Ukrainian Cities, as should provide should be provided to the seats in all the decisions. Uh, there will be huge needs for investments, and there will not be enough resources. So the National Association plays the main role in having a consensus among mayors. Where should be the priority given? What will be a fair distribution of funds? So these should not be top down, because if it's top down, it will never be fair. Let the mayors first digest all these proposals and decisions among themselves, and then enter into multi-level governance and negotiation with the government and the other actors in defining the priorities. And the last thing I want to mention is that the direct involvement of local governments as actors in development needs to go hand by hand with also a fair fiscal decentralization. If the fiscal decentralization does not happen, the local governments will not be able to become development actors, because they will be struggling with delivering their basic services. And so that's why it is so important that the fiscal decentralization goes in parallel with all these other processes, EU integration and reconstruction. And here, again, the National Association has the crucial role. And once the local governments are effectively engaged in reconstruction, this will mean that their own capacities their staff capacities to handle complex projects at local level will be increased. Our message is there are no consultancy companies, there are no outside actors that can substitute the internal capacities of local governments. This is where the focus should be made, and the approach of ULEAD and all other actors in mobilizing this peer-to-peer support of European cities for Ukrainian cities is the right approach, because this is the way the capacities of local governments, of administration of local governments, will be there to enter one by one in all these important projects that are ahead of us. I'm very optimistic about the future, because we have a very strong partner there, the Association of Ukrainian Cities, and we have a big commitment of all European actors, including the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities, CMR, Committee of Regions, NALAS, all other networks and cities are there to support this process. Thank you so much for giving me the floor.